Hello babes! Welcome back to my channel. I'm Charlie and I talk about all things knitting, and today I'm going to start off a tutorial for how to make this gorgeous Entrelac jumper. So this is one I made last year. I figured it all out. I was super inspired by Laerke Bagger and the work that she does. She uses a lot of large scale Entrelac like this. I'm going to link her in the captions so you can go follow her because she's the absolute queen. So I thought I'd make a little tutorial showing you how to work this amazing stitch, do some fun colour work. I got sent all of this amazing Noro yarn. I feel very lucky because Noro is absolutely gorgeous, and I really want to make something that, this one too, oh my gosh, it's so pretty. I really want to make something that shows off that gorgeous yarn and all those amazing colours, and I think the large scale squares like this will be just the trick. So come along for the adventure with me. Let's figure this out as we go. I'm still learning. And yeah, let's have some fun. Grab your needles. And just to talk through yarn choices, this is all in double knitting yarn. Obviously I chose loads of different colours. I mean, it would work really nicely with just two colours even if you want to have a really bold contrast. Or you can do, of course, as many as you want. Make it really bright, really colourful, really fun. I think this is something that is such a good project to work out a colour palette on if you don't feel confident sort of using colours normally. This is one where you can really visualise it as you go and try out different things and see what works. So yeah, I would recommend just get a bunch of double knitting. It's great for stash busting if you've got loads of half leftover skeins and stuff. You can just have a couple of squares here and there with different colours. Yeah, this I'm going to be using the Noro. So this is cotton, viscose, silk and polyamide blend. And let's see, I'm pretty sure it's a double knitting. I don't think it actually says. Oh yeah, so 4mm needles, so it's basically a double knitting. Yeah, and I've got colour 26 here, which is a lovely light green. I've got colour 31, which is a dusky rosy pink. And then the gorgeous colour change one is colour 3, and this is cotton silk polyamide. So I can't wait to cast these on. Yeah, I'm going to be using 4mm needles. Grab yourself some double knitting. I'll meet you on the other side to start the tutorial. So before we do anything, before we jump in at the deep end with an entire sweater, of course you're going to be very well behaved and do a swatch. So let me talk through this stitch with you so you can visualize it and know what we're doing. This is our cast on edge here and here. So we start with these little triangles and work these, and then we will work the edge triangle from right to left, the center rectangles and the second edge triangle. So eventually you'll end up with straight edges on the sides, and it sort of works out to be a whole rectangle. And then what you can do once you have your swatch, measure your tension to make sure that it matches what is recommended on your yarn sleeve, so that you're not way off and knitting way too tight or way too loose. You sort of want it to be a reasonable steady tension, so that it looks good on a jumper. And yeah, once you know the rectangle width, you'll then be able to work out how big your pieces will be, so you can sort of adjust according to your size if you need to add and remove a few stitches. I won't be releasing this as a pattern, so I haven't graded all of the sizes, but it's a pretty oversized piece. It would be fine for anything from like UK size 6 or size XS up to, you know, a large and extra large 12 or 14. But again, if you want to add and subtract stitches to sort of make it smaller, larger, according to your wishes, go ahead. I'm sure that'll be easy enough to figure out once you know the technique. And yeah, just to show you this fit for reference, I'm not joking when I say it's like super oversized. It would be great for kind of a number of sizes. It's armpit to armpit across the chest. It's 70 centimeters wide. So super oversized on like a size small, and it would, yeah, go up to probably an XL or a 2XL even. Yeah, here is the finished piece. So first up, let's go through this lovely jumper so you can visualize what you are knitting. We start off here is our cast off edge. We're going to work these triangles. The rib hem is picked up and added later, so don't worry about that right now. Then we work from right to left, these rectangles. And then we come back left to right, working these rectangles. And then we go right to left, up here. And eventually it gets to the point where we get to the neckline, which is literally just a missed out triangle. There's no shaping, there's no funny business. We just use that ready-made triangle shape as a neckline, dead easy, and we do triangles straight across for the shoulders. So essentially we're knitting two big rectangles made out of other patchworked rectangles for the front and back, and smaller rectangle panels for the sleeves. So here is my cast on. It looks like a little bit of a tangle right now, don't worry too much. So essentially I have cast on 26 stitches in each colour, and you can see between each section, each different colour, I have just tied the yarns together just with a really rudimentary knot, just to keep everything in one piece so we don't get random sections coming away. Again, don't worry about being like super neat right now. We're gonna fix everything up and make sure it looks amazing at the end. Yeah, so this is our intarsia cast on. So to start our first row, which is going to be this green section here, we will work each little triangle section in each colour separately. So I've also tied off the cast on yarns just to stop me getting confused. So we start with a wrong side row. So we're just going to purl those first two stitches just as a regular purl stitch. 1, 2, and then straight away you turn the work over and you knit those two stitches. It's always a little bit weird on that first cast on edge until you kind of get going. Okay, and then we turn again and we purl 3 stitches this time. 1, 2, 3. And again, you're going to turn that work and knit those 3 stitches. So you can already see how that triangle is forming. It's essentially like partial knitting to create that slanted effect. And we just keep going like that for each triangle. So this row will be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and again turning and knitting those 4. So you'll keep working until you've adding 1 until you've knit every stitch along this first row to create your first triangle in the green. So I will join you back there when we have our first triangle. Keep going. Okay, we have just finished our very first triangle. We finish here on a wrong side row, and the last thing we've done is just purl that very last stitch in the row, and then we're done. I'll show you what it looks like from the front. It's already looking so pretty. I love that you can already see the color gradient coming through. Don't worry that it's a bit puckered on this edge. That will come out through blocking. And from here, you can snip that end to stop you getting tangled up if you're using lots of different colors. And we do the exact same on our second triangle here, on our pink one. So we can start with, let me just untangle these yarns. So we can start with purling those first 2 stitches. And then we turn and knit them. You can see here where it comes in, very handy to keep everything tied together so it's not all coming to pieces. And then just as we did on that first triangle, we increase the number that we're purling every row. So this row we purl 3, 1, 2, 3, and then turn and knit those stitches. One, 2, 3, and the next row will be 4 purls. 1, 2, 3, 4. And you'll keep going just like that, purling 1 more each row and then turning and knitting those stitches until you have 2 triangles. So I will meet you back there to show you how things are looking. Have fun. Okay, I totally lied. I ended up going to craft club and nearly finishing all my triangles. So this is our very last one. I'm doing it in green. I'm just down to the last few stitches. And again, I'm getting like very tangled from these circular needles, but whatever, it's fine. So I'm just going to, as we've been doing, knit back on these stitches. I find this stitch so satisfying to do, just watching each little segment grow is so lovely. And once we get to the end, just like we've been doing on all the other ones, we turn and we're going to knit 1 more purl stitch from the row. Okay, and one more purl, and there we go. So hopefully you've got the hang of it now. This is kind of what you should be looking at. The triangles sort of get folded up to the cast on edge until we come back in and work the second section. So it does look weird, but just trust the process, you know. And I will meet you in a moment once I've finished this last triangle, and I will show you how to make that first rectangle row. Okay, that last triangle is finished. And yes, this is how it's gonna look when you finish your triangles. Don't worry, it's gonna start looking normal very soon. So for our next row, the bit we're going to be working now is this triangle here, the left leaning triangle. So we will create this straight edge that's going to be the side of our main body rectangle, and that works by coming up the side of this triangle we've just finished here. If you can picture that. Okay, so we're gonna grab our contrasting yarn. I'm gonna work in this color changing green color and just start using that as your new yarn. You can actually cut the previous yarns so that we're not getting super tangled again. So all we want to do to start off with is just knit those first 2 stitches in our new yarn. 1, 2. And again, just to avoid getting tangled here and keep everything kind of tight together, I'm just going to tie our 2 loose ends together. Again, don't worry too much. We're gonna like come back and neaten all of this up anyway once we've finished. We have loads of lovely ends to sew in. Oh my god. Oh. Okay, there we go. So we've knit those first 2 stitches. We turn our work. And this time it's slightly different. So we're just gonna pass that first stitch, slip it onto your right needle purlwise without purling it, and just purl that next stitch. So to create that triangle edge, we need to increase into the first stitch and decrease from these stitches here. So how that works, you can do 1 increase into the first stitch, any increase you like. I just sort of like to bring the bottom loop up onto the needle to create 2 stitches to work into, but you can make one right, make one left, knit into the front and back, honestly, whatever you prefer, as long as you end up with 2 stitches from the 1 stitch. So working an increase there. And then the decrease that we're going to work here is slip 1, so you're slipping it knitwise without actually knitting it. Knit 1 from your stitches on the bottom triangle and pass that slip stitch over. So we've got 3 stitches there. You can start to see the little base of our triangle forming. And on the wrong side row, every time you're just gonna slip that first stitch purlwise and purl the rest of the stitches all the way to the end of the row. I'm going to show you this a few more times. So we increase into that first stitch, work knitting all the way till the last little stitch, and then we slip this one knitwise, knit one of our original stitches, and then pass the slipped stitch over to decrease, and then turn. Slip that first stitch purlwise and purl to the end of the row. And one more time. You're probably already an expert at this now. So increase into that first stitch. Knitting to the last stitch. And then we slip, knit our original stitch and pass the slip stitch over. So yeah, our little left leaning triangle is starting to appear. You're going to want to work that same repeat all the way up to the end of our original triangle there, and then you will have your left leaning triangle like this. Okay, I will meet you right there when you've finished. Okay, I'm just coming to the end of that side triangle. So with this very last stitch, we knit one, pass the slipped stitch over, and here it is. So this will form the side of our rectangle. So the next step is to knit our first rectangle that will be coming off the side of this triangle. So again, I'm gonna snip this yarn and change to a contrasting color in this lovely pink. And the first thing we do is pick up stitches along this edge. So we need to pick up 26 stitches, the same number that we cast on. And that works out at about 1 stitch every 2 rows on this stocking stitch. So you'll miss one loop and pick up a stitch in the next loop. "25 and 26, that last stitch, get right into the corner there so it doesn't create any holes or loops. Okay, so here's our new cast on edge. We'll just be working on these stitches only in our new cast on colour, and the wrong side rows, the purl rows, exactly the same as before. So we just slip that first stitch purlwise and purl all the way to the end. And because we're doing a rectangle, we don't need to do any increases into this first stitch like we did with the triangle we just completed. So the right side row, we just knit all the way across to the last stitch, where we'll do that same decrease as last time. So just knitting normally all the way across, 25 stitches. I really love this combination of colours, by the way. It's looking so nice already. Pink and green is really one of my favourite combinations. Okay, and then into that last stitch, the same as last time, we slip it knitwise without working it. We knit that stitch on this triangle stitches and pass the slip stitch over. Turn the work again, just work on the pink stitches and slip that first stitch purlwise and start purling as normal all the way to the end. So those are your 2 rows for that first rectangle, and you'll start to see that the techniques are basically the same, but they'll just be in a slightly different order for the rectangles, depending on which direction you're going in. Yeah, that's all you need to keep a track of, really. Promised you it's easier than it looks. So just complete those 2 rows. Keep repeating those 2 rows until you've knit across all of the stitches in this triangle. And you'll have your first rectangle. I will meet you there. So here is our first finished rectangle. As you can see, we've worked along all the stitches on this triangle here. And our next step is to do exactly the same as this one on this edge here. So we start again by picking up those 26 stitches. I'm going to change to this green yarn again. Picking up 26, and remember it's about 1 stitch every 2 rows, should work out as. .25, and for for the last stitch, that 26 stitch, just do it right in the corner there to avoid any holes again. And we're just going to do exactly the same as last time on these wrong side rows. We slip that first stitch purlwise, and then we purl everything as normal to the end. Okay, last one, and then we turn our work and we're gonna knit all the way along these again and do our decrease at the end into the stitches on this last triangle. So knitting as normal to make our second rectangle. And when we get to this last stitch, we slip it knitwise, knit the first stitch from our triangle. I'm just going to tighten up those stitches and pass over the slipped stitch. And that makes our decrease. So continue like that, and we will have our second rectangle. I'll meet you there. Oh my gosh, you guys, I'm so silly. I didn't realize we had one more rectangle to knit. So we've done our 2 rectangles on this row already. We need to do another one along this edge, just following the exact same steps as we've done previously by casting on stitches along this edge, and then work your decreases along the last set of stitches on your other needle. And then it's on this triangle that we work the edge triangle. So sorry for confusing you. I'm sure you see that this knitting can get a little bit confusing, but I promise it will all make sense soon. So yeah, I'll meet you when we've finished this last rectangle and we'll work that triangle together on the edge here. So our third and final rectangle of this first row is complete. Look at this gorgeous colour change yarn. I can't believe how pretty it is. So all that's left to do now is that final edge triangle that's going to come up here. So we do the usual, we change our yarn to the one we want for this section, and then we're going to cast on 26 stitches as we have done previously. So I will see you at the end, 26 stitches later. So now that we have our stitches cast on, we have 26, we're going to turn that work and just purl across that first row, just as normal. All the stitches, and this is basically like working the inverse of the first triangle we did on the other side, where we started with 2 stitches and we work all the way up to 26. With this one, we start with 26 stitches, so we decrease until we just have 1. Okay, all of our stitches purled, so we turn the work and we're gonna knit as normal all the way to the end, and then we just knit those last 2 stitches together to decrease, and that's going to create our triangle shape. Oh. And you can just repeat those 2 rows. So purling the wrong side rows all the way to the end, and on the right side rows we knit to the last 2 stitches and knit them together all the way until you have 1 stitch left. Okay, and knit those 2 together. Easy. That's our first decrease. So I will join you again when I've got 2 stitches left, and I'll show you how to finish off this triangle and kind of tie it off, and then we can start on our second row. Hello again. I finished off our little edge triangle here while I was watching telly last night, and we've gotten to the point where we have 2 stitches left. So all we do is just knit those last 2 stitches together to finish off that row, and then we can sort of pull that loop out and just tie it off. So just like casting off 1 stitch. There we go, and just make a simple knot. There we go, edge triangle complete. And I'm going to show you now how to work our right leaning rectangles on this next row. Here is what our knitting looks like up to this point. Again, it does look a little bit crazy while it's on the needles. Just embrace it. I mean, it's a lovely texture, right? It's all going to work out as we go. So grab your next color. I'm going to go back in with the plain green, and to start this we are going to pick up stitches purlwise with the wrong side of this triangle facing us. So start off with a slip knot, and you can pick that up as your first stitch. If you're not familiar with sort of picking up stitches purlwise, it's really just like doing it knitwise, but in reverse, in the opposite direction. Yeah, it's a nice brain training exercise. Yeah, and we're going to do exactly the same as we did before, picking up 1 stitch every 2 rows for a total of 26. And just like before, make sure you get your last stitch right in the corner there to avoid any gaps. And then we can turn around, start working on these stitches only. And just like the previous rows, we're gonna slip that first stitch knitwise and just knit as normal all the way to the end. Okay, turn again, and on the wrong side rows we purl to the last stitch, and that's when we do our decrease to meld the stitches together. Okay, we get to our last stitch and then we purl together the last stitch of this row with the first stitch of the previous row. Purl those two together and turn, and then we keep going. We slip that first stitch and continue knitting to the end. And just like we have previously, we keep repeating those two rows until we've purled all of the stitches from this rectangle to create our new rectangle. So I'll meet you there. Enjoy the process. So we are nearly at the end of our first right-leaning rectangle, and all we need to do now is work to that last stitch just like we've been doing and purl two together, and that brings that rectangle to a finish. So we can tie off that yarn and start on the next one. We are going to do exactly the same as we've just done, picking up stitches purlwise along this next edge. I'm going to go for my pink again, and I'll just show you one more time how to do those purl stitches, picking up stitches purlwise. Yeah, picking up one stitch every 2 rows, so missing out a stitch in between. And then once you've got 26, you can start working exactly like we just did on this previous rectangle, which is every wrong side row, you're purling the last 2 stitches together, well, the last stitch. And then when you have 26, we're going to work this rectangle exactly like we just did with this first right-leaning rectangle. So that's slipping that first stitch every knit row, and every purl row, every wrong side row, you purl as normal all the way to the last stitch and purl 2 together with the first stitch from that previous rectangle. So yeah, I will join you there. We're very nearly at the end of these instructions now, because the rest of the jumper is just going to be repeating these steps that we've already done. So I have just finished up our second rectangle here. Here is how it is looking from the front now. Just thought I'd show you so that you can start to see how the patchwork is starting to come together. You can start to see how the rows are working together. So you can visualize it. We're going to work one more right-leaning rectangle here and one more here, and then we'll reach the end of this row, and then we can just start repeating all of those steps again until we have the front panel of our jumper. So yeah, we're going to do exactly the same as we just did. We'll cast on stitches purlwise along this edge, and purl 2 together with the stitches along here, and do exactly the same again here, and then that row will come to an end, and I will meet you there when we've done 2 more rectangles. So here is my lovely knitting so far. You can see we've got one left leaning row and one right leaning row. I've just finished this last right leaning rectangle here. So essentially all we need to do now is just repeat those 2 rows one more time. So now we're going to start working towards the left again, and then we'll do 1 more row of right leaning rectangles. So feel free to just rewind the video to rewatch those steps, or maybe if you're super speedy, you've memorized it already, amazing. And then I'll show you how to skip the rectangle for our neckline, and I'll show you how to do these triangles at the top to make the shoulders straight. But apart from that, enjoy, have fun learning this new technique, enjoy working each little rectangle. I just find it really satisfying. Hope you're enjoying it as much as I am. I'll see you in a few rows. So here we are. I've had to move to the floor because it's now too big to show you on the table. This is our final piece of Entrelac. So just so you can see where we are, we've done 1 more row of left leaning rectangles and triangles, and this final row of right leaning rectangles here at the top. And if you're like me and you can't keep track of sort of where you are and counting rows in this sort of broken down fractional knitting, we have 2 rectangles and a triangle on the right leaning rows and 2 full rectangles on the left leaning rows. So that's when you know you're at the right spot. So all we need to do now is sort of fill in these gaps here, and this middle gap is going to become our neckline, so we just miss that one out completely, and we'll pick up stitches along here later on to create a neck rib. So I'll show you how to begin to work the little triangles here to create a straight edge for our shoulder, and then we also need to fill in the sort of live stitches here to create an edge for the edge of our rectangle if we picture the body as a rectangle. Okay, I'm loving how it's looking so far. The colors are just working together so nicely. So yeah, let's finish off. This is our last step, and then we just need to repeat the exact same for the back and the sleeves. It's a lot of knitting, but yeah, I hope you're having fun. I am. Yeah, I'll show you how to do these. Oh my gosh, do you know what? I just filmed the whole process of picking up stitches and starting off the triangle, and then I realised I hadn't actually pressed film. And I refused to frog this knitting, so let me just show you the repeat rows that you need. Of course, I've passed all of the stitches over from this last rectangle that we did onto my right hand needle. We picked up our 26 stitches as normal along the edge of that rectangle, and then to create the sort of triangle, it's basically going to look something like our edge triangle, where we've decreased at the end here to create this flat edge. So we do that. The first 2 stitches of the right side row, the knit row, you knit 2 together. Then, as normal, we're just knitting all the way until that last stitch where we're gonna do our decrease to combine the stitches together. I'm so annoyed that I forgot to press record. It was gonna happen at some point. Okay, and then when we get to this last stitch, you know the drill. We slip it knitwise, knit a stitch from our previous rectangle, pass the slipped stitch over, and then when we turn and work the purl row, we slip that first stitch purlwise and purl as normal all the way to the end. And those are your 2 rows to create that sort of top shoulder triangle, to create that flat edge that we need to sort of fill in the rectangle. If you picture the front and the back as a rectangle, we fill those triangular gaps. Okay, so just keep repeating those 2 rows until you get to the very last stitch. And I'll meet you there, show you how to finish it off, show you how that triangle's gonna look. Enjoy the process. I know this is a lot of knitting. I feel like I've already been knitting this front piece for so long, and I'm like daunted by how long it's gonna take to do the sleeves and the back, but I'm just trying to embrace it. I'm just like, hey, I love to knit. Why am I daunted by so much knitting? Maybe I just need to cast on like a fun little side project to mix it up and give me that dopamine rush. Yeah, so just enjoy the process. I'll be there with you the whole way. We'll get through it together. I'm just not used to working in double knitting. It grows so slowly. I need like a chunky project to give me some relief in between. Yeah, I'll just show you one more time. When you get to that last stitch, slip one, knit one, and pass the slip stitch over. Okay, there's the start of our triangle. You can see this edge is starting to come across at a right angle. See you soon. So here is our lovely triangle so far. We are down to the last 2 stitches. So I'll show you how to do these. Instead of knitting 2 together like we have done previously, we'll just knit this first one, slip the last one, and then knit and pass the slip stitch over, then purl those 2, and then here we can knit 2 together. And then what I like to do is just knit that last green stitch and pass the slip stitch over there. And that creates a nice neat tight edge. And then we can just tie that last stitch off in a loop. And then we are done with our first triangle. So this next gap, the central gap, we leave, we pass over this. We're not gonna pick up any stitches here. This will be our neckline. So we'll just pass these stitches onto the right needle. Sorry if you can hear my cat going crazy in the background. Okay, so we move all of those stitches over. And we're just going to do exactly the same. Repeat what we've just done, picking up stitches along this rectangle, working on those stitches there to create a second rectangle, and then I will show you off. I will show you how to finish off the corners. See you in a moment. Hello. Okay, I haven't actually filmed for this in weeks. I have just been sort of knitting away quietly, forgetting to film my steps. But here we are. I have finished my front panel. So you can see I've just missed out that middle triangle, and that's going to be the neck. I have like live stitches on the cable here. And all that we need to do now is just finish off the 2 final triangles here and on the stitches here. So I have to admit, I have not found a particularly elegant way to do this. I've looked at every tutorial video, every set of instructions, and nobody seems to know how to finish off those left-leaning triangles on the side, which is fine. My solution is, here's my back panel that I've done, just to show you. My solution is just to finish off regular left-leaning triangles like we would do on the side here. And then when it comes to making up the jumper, we just fold them in half and stitch those, you know, the extra back bit down to hide them, which again is not like the most elegant, but there seems to be no other way to do it to get those stitches sort of decreased in the right way. We've got the same here, so when it comes to kind of making it up and stitching those seams together, you won't really be able to tell. We're just going to finish it off like super cleanly with some stitches. So yeah, to finish off your panels, just do some of those, well, one of those left-leaning triangles on these stitches and pick them up on this edge here, and then that will be your panel finished. And then of course I've already done the back panel, which is exactly the same as the front panel, but of course we fill in that middle triangle instead of leaving it clear for the neck. So yes, lots of knitting, enjoy. I will also show you how to do the sleeves now as well. And here is our sleeve panel, again, that I have been knitting magically in the background while forgetting to film for the tutorial steps. But essentially, again, it's just the same as the front panels and back panels, just on a smaller scale. So this is the cast on edge. We start by casting on with just 2 of those starting triangles. Then we have our left leaning row with 1 rectangle and 2 triangles. Then we have right leaning rectangles twice, left leaning row, 2 triangles and a rectangle, and then that cast off edge is just working 2 triangles, decreasing on both of the sides to cast off. So super simple. I'm going to go and knit the second one now, and then I will be back to show you how to sort of sew everything together and complete the ribs so that we can finish off our jumper. Hello, it's been like 3 months of knitting since I first started filming. I feel like the hard part is over now. We have all of our panels ready to make up, and all we need to do is crochet them together, knit the trims. The hard part we've made it through. Yeah, in like the 3 months since I started filming, I feel like my hair's probably changed. I've gone through like 4 manicures. We've changed the decor. We've put the cat tower on the wall, if you're wondering why everything looks so different from the start of the video. Hey, that's knitting. Things take a while. They're gonna take a while, it's fine. So yes, we have our back panel, 2 sleeves, and front panel. There we go. So we're all ready to go. First things first, I'm going to show you how to sort out those awkward triangles on the edges at the top of the front and back panel. We just need to fold them down and secure them so that they have a nice straight top. And then we're going to crochet together all of the seams. I'm going to show you how to pick up and knit stitches for the rib trims on the cuff and the hem, and do a nice little fold over trim for the neck. So yeah, have fun, give yourself a pat on the back for making it this far. I'm proud of you. So what we need to fix our little awkward triangle at the top is a darning needle And you can actually just use the yarn that's sort of left over when you pull through and like cast off that last stitch. So thread your needle, and then we're just gonna do a couple of stitches in this base corner to kind of secure it. There we go. And again, I mean, don't worry about being like too neat. This is all gonna be on the inside of your jumper or like hidden in the seams. So I'm not worried as long as it looks good while I'm wearing it. I know lots of people want to do things super neatly, even on like the back side of the work. But I think this is fine. And you can see when we see the right side, it blends in with the others with a nice straight edge. Okay, so yeah, pull through your last loop to create a knot, and then you can just sew that end into the seam. There we go. So do that with all of your triangles, all 4 of them at the top, and then we can start to crochet together our seams. So let's talk seams, and just a reminder, this is the original with these lovely sort of contrast color outside crochet seams that mix, match with the cuffs. And yeah, these are the sort of shoulders, the neckline. I think it brings the jumper and all the different colors together really nicely. Of course, you don't have to do this. You can join the panels in any way you wish. If you'd rather have just like a classic mattress seam, blanket stitch, whatever you prefer. But yeah, I just think this is a nice little touch to add something different. And so to do this, you're going to use your normal bog standard 4mm crochet hook, and I'm going to use, wherever it's gone, I'm going to use this grey yarn. This is, what even is this? Something vintage, Blacker Blends, Hebridean wool with mohair, but just a normal DK yarn. Again, you might want to use one of the colours that you've used already in your jumper, or yeah, use black or a contrast colour to add a little bit of something different. I'm just going to show you on a sleeve, because it's the smallest to fit in the frame. And again, don't worry about all your ends. We will deal with all the ends later. So this is the opposite from what you'd normally do with a seam, where you would have like the wrong sides facing you. We're going to have the right sides facing us, and we're going to work down this seam just like that. So starting off with a slip knot just as normal. And okay, and then we can just crochet. Let me just line my ends up. I might get in a little bit of a tangle. If you're really organized and smart, you might like already sew in all of your ends before you get to this stage, but couldn't be me. Okay, so we bring the yarn over through that first slip knot and through those 2 loops. I mean, I'm not a crocheter. I think this is, in English crochet, this is a double crochet, I think. Maybe not. And through the next loop. So I think just like with picking up stitches, you're aiming for 1 crochet stitch for every 2 rows of knitting. So it's kind of easy to tell on these end pieces because you're sort of aiming for that larger loop there and here and here. But again, it doesn't matter too much if you aren't doing it like every row precisely. It's just a rough estimate to keep that tension correct. There we go. So already it's looking quite nice with that grey. I think this is going to really make all the panels, all the different pieces kind of pop against like a neutral contrast. That's what I'm kind of hoping for. Okay, so yeah, if you've got the hang of this, just keep going. Get all of your panels crocheted together. So that's shoulder seams, side seams, and all the way along your sleeves as well. And you should have something that starts to resemble a jumper. And then I will show you how to do the cuffs, hems, and the neckline. So enjoy this process. So I have my lovely crochet seams done. So let's pick up some stitches and start our trim. This is going to be our cuff. So I have switched to using 3.5mm needles. You can either use like a shorter cable like I'm going to do and just work it all in the round, or if you only got like a really long cable, just do that and use a magic loop if you prefer. Either way, completely fine, it's all going to look the same. So let's start by casting on a couple of stitches. I'm just going to fold all of our loose ends inside for now and deal with them later. So we start with our first slip knot. Oh, wrong way. Yeah, you can start on the underside of the sleeve just so that join and any sort of jogging is hidden. And then just like before, we're going to pick up one stitch for every 2 rows of knitting. Just about, I mean, again, don't worry too much if it's not accurate. If you miss a few or you do a few next to each other, yeah, so we've picked up one, we miss one, we pick up one. Can be a little bit hard to tell on this edge where they're sort of, you know, slanted stitches. Show you a couple more. Okay, so there's the start to our cuff. We're going to do stitches, pick up stitches all the way around and then back on this side until we've got a full loop that we can work in the round. So I will meet you there when I've picked up all of my stitches. So I have picked up all of my stitches all the way around the cuff and we're going to start working our rib. First, I just want to show you a little trick I like to do when I'm working in the round. You know, sometimes when you join in the round and you get a little hole in that first stitch. So just knit that first stitch, and to avoid it happening, we pass the next stitch over. Oh. We pass that next stitch over, and that will just keep that first stitch, the kind of opening there, really secure. And then we can just keep going round in a standard 1x1 knit purl rib. And you'll want to work, I mean, a minimum of about 5 centimeters. Again, it very much depends on like the kind of look you want. This is your sweater, don't forget. So if you want a little rib, if you want a nice chunky rib, do like 9-10 centimeters. I'm gonna go, I think, yeah, like 5 or 6 centimeters. I might try it on and see how it looks on my wrist before I cast off. And yeah, don't forget, you can do that. You can sort of adjust as you go. So yeah, have fun with your rib, enjoy. So I finished off my 2 lovely cuffs last night. while I was watching a movie, and I'm ready to move on to our final step, which is picking up stitches and doing the neckline rib. So I'm sticking with the same 3.5 needles to work this rib, and again you can use a long cable and the magic loop, or just stick with a short cable that's about the size of the neck. So I'm using the same yarn. So start with that slip knot again, and just like we did before, let's pick up stitches again, aiming for 1 stitch for about every 2 rows. Pick up 1, and this one, there we go. So yeah, just keep doing this all the way around the neck, and then we can join just like we did on the cuffs by passing over that last stitch over the first stitch to create a nice neat join. So yeah, I'll meet you there. I'm just gonna pick up these stitches, and then I'll show you how to work that lovely folded rib trim. See you in a moment. And just a little note, when you get to this edge of the knitting, it will look slightly different because obviously we're picking up stitches from the side edge of the knitting on this side of the neck, and then we're on the cast on edge or cast off edge of the knitting on this side, but you can still pick up 1 stitch, miss a loop, pick up 1 here. It's just slightly different to the other side. There you go. Okay, our stitches are picked up, and I've done that little trick of passing the first stitch over, passing the last stitch over the first, just like we did on the cuffs. So then all we're going to do is just work in our 1 by 1, 1 by 1 knitting purling rib for about 7 centimeters. Again, if you want it slightly shorter, slightly longer, that's fine, but 7 centimeters will give us about a 3.5 centimeter neck trim once it's folded in half, and I find that's the look I like. So yeah, I'm just gonna knit all of that rib. Again, if you find it easier to pop a little marker at the start of the row, just so you can keep count. If not, it's fine if you just want to like mentally to keep track of, which seam you started on. Yeah, so enjoy your rib. We're very nearly there. I'm proud of you for making it this far. See you soon. Okay, last step, and we're so nearly done. I have my 7 centimeters of rib for the neckline, and just making sure that you're either back at your marker if you put a marker in, or at the seam where you started, so you know it's a complete row. And let's do the fold over neck trim. So what you're going to do, that first knit stitch, if you started on a knit stitch, slip it onto your needle, onto your right needle, and then you're going to track the stitch on the reverse side, so the purl side of the stitch, and then slip the bottom of that stitch also on your needle, and then you're going to sort of knit 2 together like that, just to hold that fold in place. The purl stitch you can just purl normally, just as you have been doing, and then on every knit stitch, slip it onto your right needle, catch the bottom of the back side of that stitch and knit 2 together. So we'll just carry on doing that all the way around. Again, just making sure that you follow the stitch, just so it doesn't get twisted, because it can be sort of confusing when you're working on the back side of the work to maybe go, oh, which stitch is it? So just make sure you're going into the right stitch so it kind of doesn't get twisted. And then once you've worked through every stitch to fold it, you'll just work a regular cast off edge on all of your stitches and you're done. And we'll have our sweater finished. Oh my gosh, we're finally there, we made it. And just to show you, this is what your folded neck trim will look like when you've completed that round of knitting the stitches together. And you can just go ahead and do a regular cast off on all of these stitches now, and we're done. Ooh, and here she is. Oh my goodness, I actually could not be happier with how this one turned out. Like the colours, the way the Noro pops on the solids. I'm so happy. I think the fit is like just right, kind of baggy sleeves. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I need to sew in some ends. I need to give her a block. And then I'm done. So I hope you guys had so much fun knitting this. I hope you had as much fun as me. I know it's like such an endurance test to knit something kind of this big and intense and kind of involved. Like it's not just a stockinette stitch where you could just switch off and watch the TV and not even look at your knitting. It's quite like mentally involved. So I hope you had fun. Please follow me on Instagram, tag me in your pictures of the finished thing. I would love to see the color combinations and how you guys interpret this tutorial. Have a beautiful day, have a beautiful time knitting this. Mwah.